This Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all those who have joined us. It is a blessing for me to be able to welcome Mr. Jimmy Obuya, who is not only a former friend and a younger mentor of mine. I have mentors from different age levels, intergenerational, and Jimmy, you have certainly been one of them for a very long time. And it's a delight, especially because you have just joined us as a partner in Lead Integrity, something which honors us and thrills us greatly. But before we proceed with listening to your wisdom on this last podcast of the year, 2024,
Oh,
we have a saying in my part of the world, Jimmy, where we say, "Khitamuhu misk," the end, the conclusion is always the musk, the most beautifully scented. And so that would be you, our Jimmy. And it is therefore truly a joy. And I'd introduce you the way that you have consented. But before I go into the formal intro, I just want to say to everybody watching that this is a gentleman who genuinely embodies a gentleman in every sense of the word. We don't use those terms nowadays. I don't know what terms we use, and I don't necessarily want to use the common parlance. I think being able to say this person, Jimmy Obuya, is a gentleman in the real sense of the word says it all to all who care. And your mission is very much in alignment with Lead Integrities in the sense that we accept and acknowledge and understand and uphold in ourselves and are accountable to ourselves to be, to serve based on values, based on principles, based on our beliefs. So, indeed, I've had the great privilege of working with you, Jimmy, and learning a great deal from your own work when we served together in Religions for Peace. And now I know you're doing great stuff, but before I preempt, you will tell us a bit about what you do. But let me just say that Jimmy Obuya is a values driven leader committed to advancing social accountability, justice, and community resilience. Grounded in principles of solidarity, compassion, and equity, he brings clarity, healing, and strategic insight to communities and institutions navigating complex development challenges. With over a decade of experience in local, regional, and global interfaith networks and multi faith spaces, he has built a very impressive set of dialogue tools, communities of linked communities, and faith inspired interventions that bridge development and stability. I would say cohesion, social cohesion, um, through the work that you do. His work has strengthened national and regional interfaith platforms across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where he has been advancing the inclusion of children, youth, and women while fostering collaboration between faith based but also secular and diverse actors in the policy arena. I particularly had the pleasure of learning from Jimmy's work when he directed transformative initiatives in child protection, youth empowerment, gender inclusion, civic education, and peace building, and led a regional project across Africa with UNICEF, where civic education, peace building, strengthened governance, coordination, community systems was at the heart of his work. He is a mentor to many, so not just me, as well as a capacity builder. And he supports small and medium sized initiatives advancing digital inclusion, social innovation, and community transformation. Jimmy Obuya, it is a tremendous privilege to have you with us here today. Tell me a little
thank you
bit,
very much.
tell us a little bit about your work now
Yeah,
in the last year, say.
thank you very much, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, from wherever you're listening. I'm sending to all of you a message of grace and peace and just comfort, the same comfort that I've also received. So I hope to spread it through this conversation. I'm very humbled by Azda, and she always has the best of the glowing tributes. But I think it also speaks to the kind of heart that she has, a heart that gives and that observes and also takes notice is very rare nowadays. And I think the vision that is here at Lead Integrity is what has really inspired such kind of movement and also this group of people to be together. So it's my privilege and a great honor to join the team and also to be part of this. I'm really humbled by this opportunity to serve at this level. My work has been cuts across faith values and trying to find meaning, trying to find that fiber and thread of faith and the values that faith espouses within and everything that we do. Many religious leaders and faith practitioners take it as part of their ministry and duty, not only to stand before people and preach or teach or coach, but also to influence the systems behind the scenes, the technical aspects, and everything else that is needed so that at least the product that comes out has the ingredient of faith inside it. And so I've been a beneficiary of many graces and blessings throughout my career path. I started off volunteering. My background was never in this field. My background, I have a Bachelor of Science in Physics. So my orientation has never been to interact or engage with people. But the context of where I am, growing up in Kenya and these parts of the world, faith and tradition or faith and culture, it's very difficult to separate the two. And you always live with that consciousness, that awareness that there's always something either that will reward you or that will punish you. So the dread and the excitement of those two sometimes pushes you to align yourself with some of these principles and values at an earlier age. It doesn't mean that you fall down, but also the compassion and the grace of being surrounded by people who care and understand love and compassion allow you to make mistakes, allow you to take risks, and even when you fall, there's a sense of community and society that governs and clocks around you. Now, many young people didn't have these opportunities. I can recount many friends who fell down or who could not continue because there was no one to guide them, or the system considered them too different. Just like today, that's what we're observing with Gen Z and technology and AI and everything else, and we are very quick to label or to brand them. The sad thing about that is that what you brand is what you want to own. Anybody wants to own. If you want to label them as Gen Z or whatever, you want them to put them in a collective box or sack so that now you can start controlling and manipulating them. And that's not what the world is about. I was watching an earlier interview by Dr. Diop where he was talking about domination. The world has a very high affinity towards domination, be it in the secular world or in the faith world. And it comes from branding. So my life, I've really been trying to struggle to beat a brand. And that's why evolution has been a very key element of what I do. Evolving with integrity, evolving with grace and accountability, and also trying to see what lessons am I learning and am I taking up, and some I'm still learning to date. So whether you're in family or you're working, that has been the aspect. So the journey in the interfaith world has been, I think, almost closely more than 15 years. I started as a volunteer, as an intern. At that time, there was a violence in Kenya. There was the post-election violence. And we were just coming from election campaigns. And the candidate that I was supporting, I was very active as a campaign coordinator in those elections, and my candidate lost. And I felt the pain because there were so many things that were happening that were not clear and straightforward. I was just coming from university, and I was wondering, how are these adults behaving this way? What's wrong with these people? Why the rules are there? Why are they not following the rules? Why is somebody doing this? So that conflict really made me question a lot in terms of the world that I was getting into outside university. And then, of course, I volunteered at the Interreligious Council of Kenya as an intern because they were also intervening. They were doing some activities to intervene near where I was staying. I think after 3 months, I began liking interacting with people, engaging with people, and just being surrounded by these very great champions of faith that I've always been observing, religious leaders from all sectors of life. Particularly fascinated at how they were able to combine, come together, and have a common identity in search for peace. So, of course, there was mediations happening, and then after that, after internship, then of course I was offered a position as a project assistant in a children's program, which to me was also very, very close to my heart. So that's when my journey started on the dialogue in terms of action, not just preaching and talking about these things, but actually being there in the front lines. So we did that, and that has been my journey ever since. I see myself as a servant of religious leaders. Many of the religious leaders have been called upon. There's a lot of demand placed on them today, be it diplomacy, be it peace building, be it intervening in very complex global issues and affairs. But what they have is their conviction, their humility, and their faith. And the secular world sometimes is not so fair when you come with that level of humility. It's very vicious. It's about people versus people. These people, they're coming operating on a spiritual level. They're coming with spiritual and moral assets and offering those in the table. While this other world that they're trying to intervene in does not play by those rules. That world creates rules that it wants to break so that they can manipulate. So we've been working very hard over the years to make sure that the religious leaders are equipped when they stand up and speak or present an issue. The background, the research is there. They've been well prepared, and we're able to assist with the research and also to tie up their teachings and the values within the space that is required. And it's only today that we're seeing that appreciation being done. Almost in Kenya, in Africa, or even globally, there's an invitation and an offer for religious leaders to come and be sit at the table and be part of the conversations. Now, the outcome or the output of what they do sometimes is not necessarily what you would expect, because it's a complex. It sounds like a complex thing, but I think the fact that the presence is there, maybe it can do something. There's still a lot of things that are happening at the global level that will work well if faith worked the way it should work. The way the divine and the creator wanted it to work. But as it is right now, it's a world that has many contradictions as well.
So you mentioned, I find it interesting that you refer to a perception that it's really about people to people, and that the issue of domination and the desire for domination characterizes quite a bit of our current contemporary relations with one another and engagements with one another. But you also seem to allude to the fact that the religious leaders come to the table with spiritual beliefs and foundations, but it's the secular world that is mean and nasty, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing you, of course. Is it really so black and white, Jimmy?
Not necessarily, because also now different and we've been in this space where we are saying that we don't want you to define interfaith dialogue and collaboration based on your own terms. If either you have a lot of resources, or you have a lot of, you have a prominent position, or you have a lot of knowledge than the other and everybody else. For example, we have indigenous African traditional leaders that we invite to global forums. They practice indigenous African traditional religions, the Voodoo, Kibanguste in DRC, in South Sudan, and all that. They may not be well versed even in terms of language and articulating their issues, even if you invite them to attend a global forum with a translator. So in terms of knowledge and power dynamics, their knowledge power is lower than perhaps an Orthodox priest who would come from Greece or from one of those prominent universities in the West. So when they sit together to dialogue on an issue, their view of peace, the power balance is skewed in terms of knowledge. This person has more knowledge and information of the benefit of research than the other one. And wherever the power balance is skewed, that's where poverty manifests. Anytime there's an imbalance of power, poverty manifests. So this person has position and influence when they go back to their place. But when they come to that global forum, their participation is limited because of lack of knowledge and preparation. So how do you do that? How do you equalize? So based on that example alone, that's what I'm saying. It may not be as black and white as we want to, but being somebody who has been working with faith leaders over the years and trying to assist them, bring them up, including even women of faith, just trying to help enable them have their confidence come up and everything else. Today I was just visiting a community of nuns that I'm supporting with some activities on communication and visibility, and it's so difficult for them to accept that because they're used to humility. You don't broadcast what you're saying. It's about God will reward you and everything else. While you find that there are some individuals who are actually using those interventions to raise more resources and do more harm because they're getting those resources, but they're misrepresenting the mission and vision of that place. So you have to really work with them a very tight rope. But the power balance, especially when you bring religious leaders to these forums, will not always be the same.
So the power balance, even between them as different faith leaders, is skewed, and I think you described it very, very well. So you've nuanced that image significantly, which I think is extremely helpful. The question then is, well, given the skewed power dynamic even within the realms of the faiths, how do you think that works with the secular? Because your original presentation, if you will, was speaking about the religious leaders come to the table with spiritual and moral convictions. The secular world is very complicated and difficult. And so, but then you've now nuanced this world of faith. So there are multiple layers. Is it correct to say there are multiple layers of power that interact, and that perhaps some of the religious leaders may be on a par with the secular leaders when it comes to power dynamics, and or is it that they're all really good? It's just that they're different between them, but the secular ones are the not so good. Is that?
Yeah. No, I think the issue is what you're offering versus what the faith is offering versus what the secular is trying to offer. Faith is very pronounced and visible when it comes to spirituality and morality. But also the spiritual and moral assets of faith communities translate into what the secular world wants, which is the social assets and infrastructure of faith. Yeah. So when you serve them your social assets and infrastructure without coming heavy with that evangelizing mission or with that prominence, and because when you start introducing faith and morality, you again imbalance the power. Now the power is skewed towards faith, because you actually have a standing. The secular world talks about values, and they talk about accountability, integrity, and all those things, but they're not defined specifically in the language of faith. They may talk about human dignity, they may talk about equality and inclusion and all that, but the language is not, isn't faith. So where you meet and bargain is how you're going to use the social assets and infrastructure that both of you agree can be used to advance or to offset the power imbalances. But the challenge is also the way dialogue and my observation is that even at the grassroots, at the community level, the dialogue is usually initiated by somebody who either has more resources or has more opportunities or maybe has the time. And so unless there's a crisis that requires urgent humanitarian action that everybody has to come, we're saying, no, this one affects everybody, then it's very difficult to get everybody to come together on that balanced sort of open approach, and that creates that creates the conflict, especially when you're designing interventions, the way you communicate and talk about things, and also the way you create spaces, especially for young people. Because I started this career very young, and not many young people have been able to continue the path. You really need a lot of patience. You really need a lot of grace, and also to be able to work with and have the right people along the path to hold your hand, so that you can be able to be a resource. Because the very, very skills and qualities that you're giving here, they can be used elsewhere, and they can be used to advance other agendas that perhaps may not be as divine, as fulfilling as the ones that are currently I'm on right now.
And isn't it also that you have different realms of diversity between these different faith communities, faith leaders. So even if you do bring as many of them around the table together, and even if each one of them is deeply committed to the mission of values and faith guided values and so on, that there are still different. If you're bringing, like you mentioned earlier, that brilliant example, a traditional leader with a leader of a church, established church, there are multiple layers of difference between them, not just power, but differences in the way that they communicate, the backgrounds that they come from, the social dynamics, the languages they speak, etc. And those differences can sometimes be enriching if there is a willingness to respect them on all sides. But they can also be a source of dissonance and conflict between them, because if the interest is quintessentially in domination, then that there's no willingness to respect a very, very different way of speaking and reaching and doing and living, perhaps. And I think perhaps we're struggling a little bit with that, because nobody's going to tell you, I don't have any values, or I don't believe in values. But people will presume and speak to being driven by values, being very interested in values. But quintessentially, we do have a bit of a tectonic difference between different faith leaders. Some of them come to the table willing to learn and see themselves as an equal to others, but some of them coming with a desire to proselytize or evangelize to the others. And some coming to the table with, look, I'm just here because this was a good meeting to come to. And I don't really know if you know what you're talking about that much. I'm not so sure I believe in what you believe. And I think it's important for us to be conscious of those different layers of human engagement, even within the realms of religion, rather than assume that it's a secular versus a religious dynamic that is operating pretty much. But you've given a very good example of the nuns that you're assisting and supporting, and how they really struggle with visibility, making visibility for themselves, because it's certainly not lack of service. They serve selflessly. They have for decades. But where do you think that discomfort with visibility and spin and talking about oneself and talking big about oneself, where do you think that comes from?
I think it's fidelity to the foundational principles that call them to what they're doing. They were called first to respond and to serve a higher being, to serve the order, to serve the church first of all, and its processes. Now, alongside that mission, they realize that actually I've exhausted all that I can. I've done my prayers, I've done my devotions, I've done everything else and all that. Now I still have to make a difference to the world, because that's part of the mission. Because the first one has been achieved. So how do I engage? So they get into it first of all because they've already built trust with the communities, and the community trusts them. So whatever they are doing is more acceptable. Is more tuned to the needs of the community. So the issue is trying to look at everything in one box instead of, this is where now I think compartmentalizing for me works very, very well in terms of analysis, because it's about, first of all, the people, and then the processes and the products of what you're doing. So if it's for such kind of groups, I emphasize more on the products. The products or the output of the work that you're doing is what will speak for you. You don't have to speak yourself, because you're in the people side. And when you start speaking as a person, or you'll clash, or you'll be in conflict with very many systems and processes and dictates of what you're supposed to do. So so now what I'm trying to bring out is, how can we make the products of what you're doing speak out, so that you can attract people who are equally ready to work with you, and those people are not far away. I remember we've had other conversations with you where you were saying, can we start looking at options of local resource mobilization? And I've tried that this year, and I believe it's something that's possible. It can work. And when people do raise themselves, they have dignity. They're happy. They're proud of their project. They're able to control the pace. they're able to look at themselves as partners. It's no longer about vulnerable people. You know, those languages. It's no longer about grassroots. I attended after a very long time, after more than a year. I think last week I attended a call, one of the meetings in one of the projects that I was doing that has advanced so well, and I could hear the language that was being used, and I was saying, "Oh my God, is this how I was talking 1 year ago?" Having interacted and been with the community members without external, with very little, the only external input and expertise that they were getting is the skills that I was bringing, the ability to analyze, the ability to scope and to compare and to draw out lessons and everything else. But everything was ingrown. So when you meet this kind of groups, this kind of women of faith and congregational leaders, and you take them to that pace. I was saying, if I was to do this project, I would have done it in 3 months on a quarterly scale, because I used to believe that change happens on a quarterly scale. But it has taken us almost 9 or 10 months to launch a product that's very beautiful and everybody is owning it. And the ceremony was so nice and everything has been supported by the community. And there's no language of vulnerables, there's no language of grassroots or whatever. It's my neighbor, it's somebody's house, it's so and so and all that. So the products speak well, and you don't interfere with a person's conviction. You know, that issue of the mind and heart, dialogue and conversation. If they don't feel comfortable coming out prominently, there's still ways that you can still be able to help them achieve, because the resources are available. Okay, the opportunities are there. You just have to package your communication and language in a way that also speaks and makes people understand where you're coming from, so that also you don't expose yourself to manipulation.
So this is a golden point. What you've just articulated is, I think, at the very heart of how development fails or works. And you've just articulated why and how. Can you elaborate a little bit? Give us a very concrete example, if you don't mind, or as close to a real example as possible, in terms of what does that actually look like? What does working with a community with their own language, values, and means, rather than waiting to get funded from outside, which is the classic example of how we've been doing development for the last, I don't know, 100 years. Give us an example of how it actually plays out very concretely.
Okay. I think the first thing is building trust, and building trust takes time, and also being able to identify who are the custodians of that trust within the community. Like for example, I found myself sitting a lot with young people, mostly young people, women traders. People are always around the estates of the community. They're earning some income. So what I discovered is that they have a lot of information about what's happening around the community and the neighborhood.
The young people and the women who are working.
Young people, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the vegetable vendors, the fruit vendors, these ones who do just casual jobs and everything else. Because some of them even were coming to help assist me in some work. They have a lot of information about what's going on. Very simple, like power outages in a certain section. There's a burst sewer pipe somewhere else. There were thieves who were arrested somewhere else. There's somebody has a funeral. All this information, and then I realized some of this information, I'm living in the same community, but I don't have as much information as they do. And the community is about people, spaces, and engagement. So there was no engagement. Then I said, this is how news works. You know, nobody pays news channels, but they get paid for the news that they bring because they have advertisement and all that. So we started a conversation with them. You know, the information you have, if somebody had it, it could have actually saved them some money or some time, and they could earn from it. So we started a process of creating an intervention around that. How do we make sure that people are engaged and the community is more engaged and people know each other? And it requires a lot of patience. It requires somebody who needs to speak their language, somebody they can see and relate to. It requires them to become very vulnerable, and you don't know everything. You take them as co-facilitators, not somebody sitting, they're sitting down and you're teaching them, but you're actually saying this and saying, no, that one cannot work. So eventually, what we decided, we said that we want to work on an intervention that will create that this information that they have, we convert it to money. So incident reporting. So from my experience elsewhere, really, we could be able to develop an incident reporting application whereby if you spot an incident in the community, even a lost pet. The other day, somebody lost their dog got lost. It strayed for 3 weeks. Eventually, there's a dog breeder in the estate who is known, and somebody saw it and called him and said, there's this dog that has been roaming around, and it looks like somebody's missing it. And the owner was reunited with their lovely dog, and they paid that guy some money. So those kind of small things is what we're looking at. We're not saying that we're giving you employment, but we're giving you an opportunity to earn from what you're having. So we've created, it took us 9 months. We did the mapping, the calculation, the workflows, we did an assessment, understanding, and the owners came with this technical methodology that I put in small, they don't come to work for us. Let us do this. So a lot of patience, a lot of iteration. You should allow yourself to be challenged a lot, especially if you're coming as somebody who knows. Sometimes you have to sit down and wait. There's a lot of politics and back and forth. It requires a lot of patience. But eventually, after almost 9 months, we have an app. It's called a digital notice board, where now community members are posting updates. And now the next phase is now to try. And when you post an update, you earn points. The next stage is now to getting partners who can be able now to come and list their services, because you're also saying, apart from incident reporting, I can also be available. I have time during the evening, and I can offer myself to tutor somebody in maths, in chemistry, help somebody with homework. I can drive somebody somewhere at night who will feel safe. Somebody wants to go for medication. They know that a neighbor is there who's available, who can equally do this work. So it's a self-sustaining community where people, the economy and funds are circulating. So, but to be able to do that, of course, you need the support of the leadership. The faith leaders have been very key in terms of helping it push around. Even the developers, the people who are designing the system, because it has been fully funded by the community to the tune of, I think, if I was to charge this in a normal project, it would be something to the tune of maybe 40,000 or 50,000 US dollars.
Wow.
The only tangible resources that we've had to come out is the money that is being paid to the developer and buying the services, paying for the server space and the domains and everything else. And that one we got the help from the local leader, the local councillor, who has been very supportive. So that's an example. If I was to do this project with institutional support and banking and funding and everything else that I had, this project would have taken even 3 years. Right. In terms of moving, in terms of ownership and buying and everything else. So that's why I'm saying, when I attended that call, I saw one of that project has really picked up, that we're working with UNICEF and everybody else, and say, hey, let me listen, because this is some of the pioneer work that we started. Let me just hear how it came out. I could relate with a lot of the results, but the language, the tone, and everything else, I felt that if this is the way I was talking in the previous years, then the process of just being able to be in the front lines and work with people has really helped. And that's how you shift power dynamics. People are talking about localization, decolonization, and everything else. You cannot do that unless you trust the communities with the resources to do the things. And the biggest resource the community have is their minds and their time. Mm-hmm. Trust that the community will use their time well. Don't come with your own time. If you tell them this project has to be done in 4 years, in 3 months, it doesn't work like that. Dynamics are different. If you want to involve women, we just realized when we were launching it that there's one particular woman who is mute. She can't speak, and she was wondering how do I also participate in this. So now we are going back to it and trying to find out how do we bring together people with the different needs and sit down with them so that they can also tell us how they want that app to work for them. For example, it's about all that. So if you trust communities, they'll know. But if you keep on coming, you parachute inside, you go out. We did it without a manual. I'm a fan of toolkits. I'm a fan of yes. We did it without PowerPoints. We did it without pen and papers. We were just sitting and discussing and having a note taker. We come the next day, we discuss. We say this is the next process. We discuss. If we hit a wall, we take a break. We do something else. But when it finally came out, today we went live on the website, and then we are going to on Google Store maybe next week. That's just one example of the many things that we've been working on. Wow. And it's you trust people with their mind. Trust that they know I'm not saying I used to trust people and I used to know that they know, but you come with a template and a checklist and a methodology, and you want them to fit into that so that they give you, and then you deduce at everything else. But the biggest resource communities have, I've discovered, is their mind and their time. And if you can collectively gather those minds together based on their own experiences, they're talking about what they face. Somebody traveled, we still have issues of water rationing in these parts of the world. So sometimes the water rationing schedule changes. Somebody left their tap open without knowing because there was no water. So water is seeping. The water came back and the whole house is almost flooded. So if somebody posts an update that the water has come back and I can see water seeping under somebody's house, that person will find a way of solving that problem. They'll either send somebody or make sure something is done, or send somebody to the main supplier and close it. And you've saved that person the cost of cleaning the house, buying new equipment, and everything else. Would that person want to reward you? Okay, they'll reward the person who shared that update, and that's how you incentivize. So yeah, in a nutshell or in a long and short, that's what it's about. But for me, it has been a very it's eye opening, and the issue of power. I think power power rests um, when it is equalized. We said that we're not going to ask for resources until we want resources, and that's what we've said. We've said we are not going to until we reach a snag. Even when we needed financial resources, actual financial resources. Somebody came out and said, "Hey, I can pay for that." Actually, you don't have to. You don't have to look for somebody. My son has those skills and is available to do that and all that. And I think that is a model that can really restore and bring back the dignity of Africa, the way Africa is being looked at. These languages of vulnerable people and what we first maybe consider as vulnerabilities I've discovered is not vulnerabilities. They've learned to live with those situations. It's not the best, but given the time and the tools and the motivation to organize their minds around that issue, they'll come up with an answer. It may not be the answer that perhaps somebody would have designed somewhere, but it's an answer that works for them, that they can sustain with or without somebody coming to assist them. And for me, that has been a great blessing and grace to be able to participate and be part of that journey.
It's remarkable, absolutely
Yes,
remarkable.
it is. Yes, it is.
And I think that what you've described is particularly and specifically the very set of skills that are absolutely required for any process of development anywhere in the world, right?
Okay.
It goes to the heart of the logic of localization, how it started. No, we need to work with and within communities as opposed to the intermediaries who can be international or regional or even sub-regional intermediaries come, because ultimately there is a massive divide between the communities and the providers of different kinds of services, including national service, including ministries of health and education and so on. Ultimately, there are divides even within the one nation between communities and, for lack of a better word, service providers, right? And what you're talking about is being rooted within the communities in such a way that you're able to get them to work together and build the kind of trust and almost the barter economy of services that does not rely on foreign financing or even national financing and funding. It's relying on the capacities that exist within the communities at a very local level, one-on-one. But those are resources. Those are the resources. Those are the quintessential community resources from within that each individual family has and carries. So it's a very, very different model from everything that we know and everything we've studied and everything that's been done in the name of sustainable development for decades. It also involves, and you will never say this yourself, so I will say it, it also involves those who are committed, like you, to give of their selves without compensation, without asking for a salary and financial recompense for the amount of time I will work, the number of hours I will put in.
Yeah.
You have served faithfully as the community catalyzer of services and support and solidarity. And it has cost you because you have not been doing this as a job. You've been doing this as a vocation, as a service commitment, as a faithful commitment to service. And I just want to nuance that, because the assumption that everyone is going to be like this is not realistic.
No.
And it shows
right.
that there's a price to pay. There is a price to pay from each of us to do this kind of service. And not everyone is prepared for that price. And when we speak about solidarity, we often think that it comes from working in big organizations and getting a good salary. And yet you are doing the work of solidarity because you're helping build capacities and you're helping support this and you're helping support that. But from what you have described and lived, and the kind of service that you and the number of people you've worked with in your communities, whether they were the nuns or the average community person or the families, that kind of services to solidarity within the community is fundamentally different from the models that we have today.
Yep.
And there's a price.
Yeah, there is a price, but what you call a price, I feel, as a reward. At first, I tried, and first of all, the benefit of the individual as a person, you collect a lot. And also, I don't discount the lessons, the toolkits, the mentorship that I've had under your leadership and everything else, and the opportunities that we've had to learn and understand and grow. So the tools and the resources that are being prepared and provided, the technical resources are very important at this juncture. As an individual, you decide what you want to do with what you have. You can decide to hold it back, the talents that you're given, and say, this one, I'll not use it unless somebody does this for me. But it's in your community. So when you see, if you reduce the burden of care and somebody, calling you for money or for this emergency and all that, you help the community grow and be peaceful. So the reason why it appears unique is that, yes, not everyone is doing it, but actually everyone should do it. There's a very beautiful story that is told by the late Nobel Peace Prize winner Wangari Maathai, who was from Kenya, who was talking about this little bird. The forest was burning, and the little bird kept on going to the river, collecting water with its beak and coming and spitting on the forest. And it kept on doing that until the other animals wondered, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your time? That fire is too big. It's not even your job. Why are you doing it? But the bird wanted to make a difference. If all the other animals in the forest joined the bird, then it will be easy. And see, God multiplies what you give to Him. When you're offering yourself and you give of yourself what you have, okay, what you can give comfortably. And if you have the time, sit down with somebody, like the conversation we're having right now. If you have the time to inspire somebody, if you have the time to mobilize people and they're available, then you multiply that effect. And when they come to realize, actually, the challenge, if you cannot serve those two masters, if you put financial incentives and sacrifice and the kind of giving and leadership that we're talking about, you cannot serve both of them. Wait. One will have to follow
nuance. Forgive me, Jimmy. Please nuance.
Yeah.
The two masters are what? Who are the two masters?
The two masters is the system that we're used to, that these skills that I'm giving, somebody has to pay for them. Mm-hmm. That if I was offering this somewhere else, this is what I will be getting. Fine. But that is not the present need at that time. It may be your own personal need, but that's not what they need to hear. What they need is to be inspired to grow up and create something that comes out. So you have to choose. And what I realize is that the more you are, the less the weight on one individual. So anytime you see somebody volunteering or giving themselves off, they're actually calling for help. That person who starts dancing alone in the beach, he keep on dancing alone until a second person comes to start dancing with him. The second dancer is the one that he wait for, not the first dancer. So I will see the second dancer dancing, and the third dancer will come up. The fourth dancer will look at the third dancer, and then the whole beach will stand up and enjoy the rhythm of the vibes. So usually we let somebody go all along, and this is the temptation and clash of leadership, especially in our region. You allow somebody to go so far ahead that by the time they realize and they've worked out the system, of course, through many things, manipulation, deception, all these things. But they come back with something that seemingly works for the time, but is not sustainable. For it to be sustainable, you need support. And you need to know that I cannot do the things, I cannot dance the way that person dances, but I can come with my own rhythm. And no matter whatever lousy style you come up with, the third dancer will always come up and everybody comes up. So I think for us, it has been a very beautiful dance, of course, filled with grace and patience and learning, and also that aspect of community, building trust and solidarity. I tried, and there's also some other initiatives. I started other initiatives where we're supporting small organizations.
Hey Jimmy, I think there's a problem in connectivity because your voice has gone a bit. So I no, I don't think it's you. I think it's just the ether. Yeah. Can you please repeat the other things you started? You were just saying I started and something else.
Oh, okay. I'm saying there's another initiative that I started on supporting founder small and medium-sized organizations to organize themselves, to access resources, and apply for funding and all these things, because I noticed that the democratization of aid is not present. Aid is only being given to specific organizations, and they hold that information. Sometimes there's a small initiative that can even benefit from $5,000, like what we were doing with the humanitarian fund. A very small amount, that's just enough to organize people, but it's not available. So I put together a few friends with my experience and with the expertise that they have. We started to research for grants, mapping donors, foundation, and everything else, and connecting them and linking them. And then we realized that even before they apply, they're not even grant ready. The readiness, you need to have a certificate, you need to have a bank account and all these things. So I tried that thing for almost 6 months, and it wasn't working. Then I said, fine, let me go to let us now work without all these things.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's happening again. It's happening again. I do apologize. I'm not sure why this happens, but I just think it's the internet connection on all sides. It hasn't been that great. But okay, so let's try while we still have some lucidity. I think there are moments of lucidity in the ether, not you. You are very lucid throughout. But you said you tried for 6 months to do this grant application, find out, the where the demand is, where the supply is, etc. And that didn't work, so you decided to do different. Can you continue, please, and elaborate that?
So it's a journey of learning, and when you humble yourself and realize that you may not know everything, or everything that you know is not perhaps what is required, then it's easier for you to walk that path of humility. Because I came with that institutional kind of knowledge. People have to, you need to apply for a proposal, you need to do a risk assessment, you need to do theory of change and all these things. And I tried that for a long time, and I realized that the weight I was placing on this community and this initiative was too heavy. Even myself, it was too difficult for me. But when I opened up and said, you guys, can we sit down and now let us try to work on something? What do you need where we are, and how can we access this? And I remember you challenging me on that as well. And it is something that I think is very possible and can work, so that when somebody comes as a funder, they come as a partner to support a very specific need where there's a gap. You don't need somebody coming from Europe or from USAID or US government to support you to have a meeting, to pay for a community meeting. People can come with their own water, they can come with their own food, they can come with their own spaces. So you don't need somebody to fund. I don't need to give a return to a donor or a partner that we've had a meeting. Okay, that one we can fund ourselves. What else do we need? So we hack this thing, we work on it until where we say that this one now we cannot afford it. That's why you bring the expertise. And what I think the expertise, the most important thing, that if I would be asked to put money into or funding into, is to learning exchange. You don't even have to tell people, just get these people from this community in Kenya, take them to Sri Lanka. Get the people from Nepal, take them to Ghana. Get the people from Ghana, take them to Mexico. they know they'll come back and they'll have that experience, because that's what has happened to me. It has been a journey of learning exchanges, travel, meeting people, and everything else. And then if you work with grace and humility, then you pick up the best. Because also you can also learn bad manners.
You can also learn bad manners, you said.
Yes, yes. So you need to be able to ground yourself in such a way that the mission that you're carrying and what you're doing, you want to pick up the best so that you can be, when you talk to people and when you meet people, there's value in it. That is where I will put my resources into. The government knows what it's doing. The government is in charge of immunization, of treatment, of paying doctors and everything else. You don't need to fund an organization to pay doctors. You need to have a forum and platform where people exchange. Young people meet young people from other areas. I try to understand, why are you operating the way you're doing? And that's why young people are very far ahead of us. They've beaten this divide through technology, through social media and applications and everything else. Mm-hmm. And they are far away ahead of any legislation or restriction that you can put. Even if you shut down internet and you say people will not meet, whatever, still they'll find a way of connecting. So why can't we just do it openly when we still have the opportunity and when there is still daylight? Because once darkness comes in and all these negative forces overcome the world, it will be too late to do anything meaningful.
Wow. Jimmy, I think you've inspired hugely, and I am certainly one of your ardent admirers, and I continue to appreciate your wisdom hugely. I want to ask you, perhaps, but might be difficult, might be easy, but you've just described your years of experience doing international development assistance the usual way, and a number of years of experience doing it in a very unusual way, which is quintessentially spoken about, but not actually done much. Or at least when it's done, it doesn't get the kind of visibility and credibility and resources that the traditional ways do. And you're talking about literally being rooted within a community and serving everyone within that community, but serving together, serving alongside one another, not having one person do the job or even one institution do the job, but it is quintessentially catalyzing a community serving each other. And then you suggested that this is something that is not only doable, it's being done. It takes a catalytic forces, if you will, powers, but those catalytic powers are present within the community themselves. They do not need to be imported from outside. And then you've also highlighted how valuable it is to learn, for communities in different parts of the world to learn from each other, that learning exchange in and of itself is a fundamental part of the sustainability of the processes, diverse as they may be.
Yeah.
And that is what may need some resourcing. But then you've also said, but the young people are ahead because they figured out ways of communicating to learn from one another that don't necessarily even require the kinds of exorbitant resources we're talking about, and institutions that are collapsing at the moment, by the way, but they don't even require that because they figured out ways of using the existing technical capacities that we've got in terms of social media and whatever. They figured out a way of doing it so that learning exchange is taking place, is happening, but it could benefit from more strategic guidance in terms of here's the community that you can link up to, etc. Okay, so you will always need the Jimmies of this world, the ones who have that wisdom, have that experience, have the background, successful background in the failed model of sustainable development, and at the same time have the successful model in the community alternatives of sustainable development, and therefore can also be able to say, you know what, it's that community in Peru that would be most helpful. It's that community, yes, in India that would be most helpful, etc. It's that wisdom of knowing how to link up the learning, but keep the learning going, and get the young people to power that learning through the means that they have in terms of communication. So it is fundamentally a collaborative process, but it does need the catalyzers of wisdom, the wisdom bearers. And they don't have to be what we keep calling in secular language the non-traditional partners, it's actually communities in their diversity.
It's
And people like yourself who have that multiple layers of wisdom. But it also takes what you keep saying, you've mentioned a couple of times as if it was perfectly normal, and we both know it is not, which is the humility, the fundamental humility, which is grace, to be able to not take all that for yourself as here's what I am, here's who I am, here's how wonderful I am, and only I can do this. You have never once said
that's
this, or
that's very dangerous. Even when you're saying it, it's
it is
yeah.
but this is the normal today. Me, I can do it all. And never
Yeah.
once have you said this. You've described all you have done, but you've never once claimed it as your own heritage and due, because you've managed to be such a critical component of
You,
success. And that humility is not something that you find normally, Jimmy. I think we're
mm,
lacking it seriously. Um,
mm,
in the realms around us, we're lacking it in the political realms, in the financial realms, in the cultural, even in the religious realms, we lack it. And that was why I challenged you just a little bit in the beginning when you were speaking about religious leaders having that natural grace and whatever. But me, myself, and I is not limited to the world of secular domains. It is
also,
a
also,
human trait in many places and spaces. But Jimmy, what would you need to, I hate the term, but I think it's, you know what I mean when I say, what would you need to scale up the remarkable work you've been doing so far? Do you need something to scale it up? Is this the scale you're comfortable with? If you were to want to expand, what would you need?
um, I think what you need actually it's about what you have already.
Hmm.
Okay, what do you have? Um, what we have is something that is beautiful and has a face that we haven't given a name, and I think the best out of this is that the opportunity to connect this community that is struggling with this thing with another community somewhere else who are maybe at one level or the other. Um, of course, there's the opportunity. Of course, you do it like what we're doing over technology, but there's also something about presence,
Hmm.
being with each other and fellowshipping and working with each other and everything else. If I was to invest, because that one will require resources. If I was to invest, I would invest in that exchange bit.
Hmm.
I know a lot of remarkable young people in India that we've worked with that are doing remarkable work, and I know some in South Africa that are doing remarkable work on climate and everything else. If you allow them that space of meeting, the challenge of seeing the same people traveling all over the world, year in, year out, talking about the same things, it's sometimes really exhausting. And they come back with more handbooks, reports, and everything else that don't reach these levels that we are at. I know there's a lot of opportunities, for example, and there's a lot of partners that we'll have who will be very happy to help us develop that app and and send us technicians and everything else. But even when we reach that point, somebody just came up from the community and said, "Yeah, I have these skills," and within 3 days they were able to give us a website and an app and everything else. So that aspect of giving, we can say that this is the experience that we have. Can you take these 3 or 4 people? Uh, Let this woman who's a vegetable vendor, let this young person who works in a car wash or a delivery guy, let this older guy who's doing this was retired. Can you get these 4 people from this side? Let them go and visit the other community and observe and be with them. And let us hear what they'll come back with. Can we try that? Can you try that a bit of it? That's number. And then secondly is also trying to really reconnect with the previous work that I've been doing because I believe some of it is remarkable, but it's still how to break it down. I'm thinking, I don't academic partnerships. Somebody was trying to study all this and put it together and say, if you really want to understand this, and perhaps you can try it this way, like what I've just talked about. It's very easy for me to talk about it and everything else, but somebody really needs to come and organize it in a way that somebody else can benefit from it and say, I can actually, we can actually do this. I can be, perhaps I'm employed by, by World Vision, by UNICEF, by some, but I have a community that I belong to. There's somewhere where I belong to. There's somewhere where I'll ultimately go to. How can I start investing or investing back into that space so that they can benefit from what I'm doing? That kind of partnership to document, because there cannot be learning exchange without what you talk about, a structured way, a connector, a catalyst, and somebody puts it together. I think that's a very important thing. The other one, of course, also is I think which is final, is the ability to trust and to create structures that harness the potential and the minds and the brains that community members have as the people who are experiencing those issues. The number one resource in any community intervention that I've realized is the experience, which is the minds and the hearts of the people that you're going to work with. And these people, they are present, but you cannot see them unless really whatever you're bringing about speak with them. Most like a lot of the work that we were doing was about co-creation and everything else, and having all those come together. But if you bring me to a meeting, I come from my home, I come to your meeting, you give me transport money, you give me, it's fine. But is that the best way to spend that money? If I have no money, would I use my own money to come to your meeting?
Okay, hold on, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I think it's happening again. So let's just take one deep breath. Take one deep breath and
Okay, a glass of
say
water.
that last point again, please, and we'll conclude with that
Yeah, okay.
last piece of wisdom.
What I was saying is that it's just a reiteration. We should not invite donors or partners who are ready to pump in financial resources to fund activities that the communities can already do themselves.
Right.
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 Even if, for example, it's a community meeting that is being held in a community hall, where people would normally walk to that hall, don't give them money for transport, because you're incentivizing them in the wrong way. Don't put those reports, because it's that community. You don't have to take people, because also the people who are in charity and are giving, setting aside their money and their resources to support these initiatives, they want it to be used well. They want it to be used in a way that multiplies, that enriches and blesses. And they want to bless that community in such a way that after they've left, that intervention or that experience still retains and is being taught to their children and the children after them, that there was once something that we started and here's the fruits. So trust the minds of the communities, trust the number one resource they have is their minds, which is their mind, their hearts, the experiences, and also their time. And the time is not necessarily, it's not that they have a lot of time. They can be 2 days, but those 2 days will be spent within 3 months, because there are other things in between. So that's the humility aspect, and that's the part of the listening and just being able to stay down and listen. But I'm not saying that this is the formula and everything else and all that. What I'm saying is that I've been on both sides, and I've appreciated what works this side. But this is how do you attribute the result that you're seeing with what actually has been contributed by so and so and everybody else? You can only attribute if you can be able to trace back the product of what you are doing. You trace the product back to the process and then to the people.
Brilliant. Jimmy Obuya, it is truly inspiring to listen to you, but it is even more impactful to learn from you. You are charting an old new road of community engagement in development. And it is an oft spoken about, but not often understood, encouraged, and respected means. And by respect, I also mean supported in the right way, politically, financially, and so on. What you've iterated very well is that you don't need to fund things that the community is willing and capable of doing. But you also need to trust that community to be able to achieve what it needs. As long as there are people like Jimmy Obuya in those communities, Jimmy, I think that that incredibly important catalytic, faith-inspired leadership of service role that you play is the deal breaker, the deal maker, the tipping point, all those words that we hear many books written about. Effectively, this is what you are and who you do. You're a faith-inspired leader who believes in service, but you believe in a service that is quintessentially rooted in and supported by and made possible by the community members themselves. And that is what we speak about, but we do not do. And yet you have accomplished already tremendous strides in with incredible devotion and sincerity. And clearly, since I'm the one piping your horn here, with humility, very obvious humility. Thank you very much, Jimmy Obuya. It's been incredibly inspiring. And I know that there will be a lot of people who will want to get in touch with you and hear more. And I do want to apologize for the internet connectivity that has made some of your words very difficult to follow, but I know that people can follow up with you. And with your permission, I will direct people to our website so that they may connect with you directly for more, because I know that there will be much more interest in that, in learning directly from you and supporting some of your work. Indeed, I hope that that will be the case. Thank you very much, Jimmy Obuya. And may you continue your work with God's grace